Hi, I'm Kezia, a brain injury survivor and a member of Bind.
And hi, I'm Carrie, a stroke survivor and a Bind member as well. And today we have Pat and Cindy Hyland with us from the High and Blake. We heard from Blake earlier, and now we're going to talk to his parents for a little while and get a little bit to know them. So welcome, Cindy and Pat.
Hi, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Welcome to Bindwaves, the official podcast of the Brain Injury Network of Dallas. I'm Brian White, Bind's Executive Director. On each episode, we'll be providing insight into the brain injury community. We'll be talking to members and professionals regarding their stories and the important role of Bind's Clubhouse. We work as a team to inspire hope, community, and a sense of purpose to survivors, caregivers, and the public. Thank you for tuning into Bindwaves. Let's get on with the show.
Just to start off, we wanted to get just a little bit about you guys, not necessarily just all about what's going on right now, but just tell us a little bit about you, what's going on, what you do.
Well, I just started a business, and so it's dog bathing and grooming, so I get to play with dogs all day long.
Yay!
So who doesn't like that kind of job?
That would be perfect for me.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have you back because we've been talking about we need a puppy episode, podcast episode with all the dog lovers that we have. So
Oh, yes.
we'll have to
Yes.
have you back again.
Got plenty of those.
I'm not as exciting for a career, but I actually am in the franchise space. So we sell service franchises like electrical, heating and air, plumbing, landscaping services. So was with that company during Blake's accident and still there.
Awesome.
Oh, nice. So we are actually extremely excited of having you guys here. As Bind members and also as brain injury survivors, both Carrie and I, and all the members of Bind, we really felt connected to you guys and in the documentary overall. So we were actually wondering, like, what happened? Like, how are you using like the social media to help you gain track of the support of Blake's injury and also the recovery? Like, we kind of had heard about it through friends, but then we watched the documentary and then we were like, oh my God, and we followed you on Instagram and like all of this. So how are you using the like social media?
Well, Blake is a big part of that, too, because he has a TikTok that he does a joke of the day. And so but we definitely are trying to get out there and get the word out for brain injury because, you get thrown into it. Nobody's expecting to be in the brain injury space, but you get thrown into it. Mm-hmm. And so we know a lot of people are where we were when we first started. And so we want to reach out and be an advocate for them and help them if any way they can, any questions they have. So we want to make sure that we're out there and we're accessible for everyone.
And a lot of the social media that started was when Blake was actually during his rehab. Mm-hmm. And it's just continued its ways to kind of keep people updated on his journey. But now it's kind of shifting as his recovery goes from rehabilitation, which I don't think he ever stopped rehabilitating, right? You know, you don't. But to really being more proactive on getting the messages out. So that's the benefit of it.
Sure, and that's exactly why we want you here, because that's our goal, too, is to educate and make people more aware, not just brain injury survivors, but the general public as well, because so many people don't understand what a brain injury is and what it does to the survivor and their families. It's just an unknown injury that people don't realize how common it is. So, and kind of along the social media, the big question is, what led to the documentary? How did y'all decide to, like, start videoing right away? And I mean, did y'all decide right away the documentary, or did it kind of like halfway through go, we should be documenting this and let's do that? I mean, what led to that? Because that's great.
Well, it was totally God just kind of leading this. This was not Cindy's or my or any of our family's initiative. We had no idea about this. It was coincidence. One of our neighbors, we used to live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and one of the young men that grew up next to us kind of became like a second son to us. When he went to college, he was at the University of Texas in film school at the time of Blake's accident. He knew Blake very well and our family. And so when we were in ICU and rehab, he called and in the ICU and he says, hey, listen, there's this crazy opportunity for us to do this short film that it was a national competition. Long story short, they came up to the hospital and one day filmed it. They had to film it, edit it, and produce it within 4 days.
Wow.
And they won this. It was all the top 100 film schools in the country, and they won it in this 2-minute short. So it went out on like Pilot TV and stuff like that. Well, a few months later, he called us. 2 or 3 months later, he said, "Listen, I was at church, and the Holy Spirit kind of told me that I just need to keep following this. I don't know what this looks like. Would you be open to us doing that?" And Cindy and I were like, "Yeah, that's fine." So these young men in college in a small old Toyota Corolla would pile up in the car, on their nights or weekends, come up from Austin, whether that was to Dallas or stay with us and travel with us. And they did it for 5.5 years.
Oh, wow.
They continued to follow us even after they got out of school.
That's
Wow.
awesome. That's very great.
Yeah, I actually, the first 5 minutes, I swear the first 5 minutes of the documentary, I felt so connected, because I actually wish, now, years and years later, it's been 5 years since I had a stroke this month, but I wish that someone would have taken pictures. I know at that time, I don't think my parents were at that level where they were like, yeah, take pictures, but I kind of wish, I wanted to know what I looked like, and seeing that as the perspective of someone else's story is actually very made me feel like, oh, it happens to other people's, and there's a huge success, not only on his behalf, but also on parents, the caregivers, the people that are connecting and being there all the time through the recovery support system. It was really, really good. Within 5 minutes, I was like, I love it. I really liked and enjoyed it, and it felt very powerful within the first 5 minutes of the documentary. So thank you for taking that opportunity. I think it's a high risk for sure of doing that.
We didn't know and they even told us at the beginning, we don't know what this is going to look like. We don't know what track. We had no control of any of the editing, because this could have gone one of 100 different ways.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So going off on that, and I know that this is difficult, but how did you guys, something that a lot of people were wondering, as parents, as unknowing and not expecting this to happen, but how did it feel to hear from the doctors, the terrible words that a lot of us hear a lot of times from brain injury? How did you feel when the doctors are like, maybe he'll never fully recover? And that's a very common comment.
And misleading.
Right.
Yeah, because we always feel because we hear it so much now that from other patients, and that they just don't give hope. And so, it's so you have to find that hope somewhere else, because you're not getting it from the doctors or the hospital, unfortunately. But I understand they have to walk a certain path, and they can't, give things one way or the other.
Right.
But yeah, that definitely was hard. So we had to fall into our faith and our support system and have them help us through that opportunity that we had. And how are we all gonna? We always say it takes a village to raise a Blake, and it's so true. With I think all brain injury people, you have to have that village around you to support you.
And advocates, right? I remember when he was still in the PICU, and we almost lost him 3 times in the first 5 days. Somebody, I won't go into the long story because we are limited on time, but he challenged me, and he goes, "Hey, do you believe in God's word and God's promises?" And I said, I my whole life I've been, faith has been important for us, but it really challenged me. And I was like, yes. And we put a stake in the ground, and we said, our son, is going to walk out of this hospital one day. And they go, they hope us, you prove us wrong. And we're like, so there's both of those battles. It was, we were heartbroken that when they told us, we were very emotional, as you can imagine, but we had to hold firm to our belief, but then also surround us with people that would also walk with us in that same belief.
Yes, I definitely feel very connected to you guys and that idea. I think it was very difficult seeing a young son in that position, and then truly believing, regardless of all the comments, this is what I'm choosing to believe in, and that's really good. Thank you.
And I know it's hard. I was 37, so I wasn't a young chick when I had my stroke, and I don't remember the beginning, And I know my parents were told very similar. I was completely paralyzed on the left side. So I know my parents were told the same thing. I was told I would never walk again. And I was like, have you met me? Tell me what I can't do, and I'm going to show you what I can do. And I was like, the first thing I need to do is be able to walk if I'm going to be able to do anything. And y'all notice my arm still, it didn't fully recover, but I'm okay. I can function. I learned how to do it. I can get myself around. I can do what I need to do. And I know going through recovery, it was hard. You know, we have realized as brain injury survivors, and I've been doing it for 13 years now. Yay me! You go through all the stages that you would normally go through with grief, and that's like, so my biggest one was probably disbelief for a while, and then anger. So, but for y'all, what was the hardest part of Blake's recovery just as a family as a whole? What was what maybe one thing just kind of made it hard to? I don't know if it was something that he wasn't being able to accomplish, or just.
I will share this with you. It had nothing to do about Blake, and it was primarily everything to do with us, meaning not in our relationship, because Cindy was such a champion. She stayed with him for 16 months at the Ronald McDonald House while I went back to work and fight insurance and deal with all that. Blake is so incredible. What you see Blake has not had a bad day except that one thing that you saw in the film. That he is happy, positive, and really he is our motivation to where, how can we have a bad day? How can we, but we do, right? Because we had this whole vision of where our son was going and at this point in his life and his dreams and his goals. And then all of a sudden we're upside down and that's completely twisted, right? So the hardest thing I think was to really unpack all that from us as a parent of what that new path looks like and journey and the anger. You mentioned it. Man, I had the anger. Thank goodness Blake has not experienced that, right? He just, that's not, but I've been angry. Cindy is amazing. If she's ever been angry, I haven't seen it. She's been obviously very sad at times and disappointed, I mean, I remember one night when Blake was still in rehab, we went out to a restaurant and we're sitting on the patio and it was homecoming. So everybody was bringing in their dates. Yes. And right before Blake's accident, he had his first girlfriend for 2 weeks right before his accident. Oh. And, it was one of those feelings of just loss and, and that was hard. I know that kind of thing hit you. And
I think that's been the hardest because Blake really didn't have a high school. He didn't get to enjoy what high school students normally enjoy. And that was hard for me because you're seeing on Facebook, everybody posting their kids doing these certain things, and Blake's missing out on that. And he never had that opportunity in high school. And so that just made me sad that he had to miss all of that, So that was the harder part for me.
Yeah. Honestly, thank you so much for sharing that. I totally see what you guys see. And I honestly hope that all of our subscribers are listening to that and really want to continue learning from different stories. And I hope that you guys do. Also, all the subscribers, don't forget to like us, to follow us, to email us, stay in contact with us, and don't miss out any episode on Thursdays, which is Thursday's podcast day. Don't forget it. Well, going off of that too, and I know that I kind of understood how you guys as family and your marriage, how strong it was. You can see it on the documentary, but how did you find that support or that connection as a whole family within your marriage and everything that Blake was going through? How did you manage that?
Well, and I know his sister was not right at home all the time, so that probably was hard as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and she's older, and so that did help a little bit with me being able to be with Blake. A lot of families don't have that opportunity where they don't have other kids at home, and I was able to stay, quit my job, and be with him. So we had that opportunity. That really, really was fortunate for us, and I've seen a lot of that when I've been at the hospitals or the Ronald McDonald House, that the parents have to work. They don't have an option. And so fortunately, we were able to have that time. But I think it's just our faith, really, with Pat and I. We just, strong marriage, and I think somebody told Pat a statistic about families that divorce when they go through things like this. But I think ours got stronger. And because I relied on him for certain things and he relied on me for things. And we kind of help each other on that and understand each other's roles on what we need to do for Blake. And so, yeah.
We just went into just active mode is what I'd say. We, Cindy had her role, I had my role. We tried to support each other as much as we could. It was hard for that first year and a half because we were separated so much, but Blake was our focus. But really, it was our faith, and that kind of kept us together, and that we believed together. I mean, when Blake's recovery was going on, we put a sign above his bed when he was even in the coma that said full restoration in process.
Yeah,
That's beautiful.
And that was our belief. And one of the things I'll share with you as well is we knew he was in a coma, but we also knew he could hear us. So we said if any doctors or nurses had anything negative to say, they would not happen in that room. They would have to be in the hall. So we had a sign on the door that said that. So, you ultimately become their advocate, right? And we also understand it's hard for a lot of families that may have to be dual income home, incomes, and or have other children at home. So there are no stones here. And I think that's why it takes a community, because the reality is, though, it shouldn't diminish the opportunity for that patient to get the treatment they deserve. Right. So I would encourage anybody that has a loved one or anybody that goes through it to surround themselves with others, because others will be there. Don't feel like you have to take that on yourself. Surround yourself with others that can help fill in those gaps so that it can take that TBI survivor, stroke survivor, through the opportunity to get as much treatment as possible.
Yes.
And I know, Pat, during the documentary, we all talked a lot about, like, you stayed here in Dallas at Ronald McDonald House with Blake, and you were back in Waco having to work full time. And I know you mentioned during the documentary that you went to counseling to help you stay strong and positive, because I know that's got to be hard all alone, not being able to be the dad that's supposed to be right there cheering on and taking care of your son.
Yeah.
So, I just think that's great that you took that step to get that help,
It's there's a stigmatism, people going to counseling, and I think that needs to be that's the enemy trying to get rid of the pride, get the help, right? And, if somebody that that it's a very safe place. And being able to talk about your feelings and your emotions, like a lot of men, listen, I just want to grit it out and endure and do whatever it takes to overcome. But you can only keep that in so long, where it affects you physically, emotionally, and it can actually affect your relationships too, right? And my relationship with Cindy and my family was more important than my pride of, because it can get destructive. So having an opportunity to reach out if needed, I think is something people should really consider.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked when I listened to that. And your comment actually was one of my favorite comments in the whole documentary, that you needed to look at his new, idea of recovery, the new idea. It couldn't be the same idea that you thought about before. It needed to be this new idea. And I think that when I was in the hospital, that's what made me wake up. If I want to be as successful as I can be, it's maybe not the same thing I was before, but there's a new idea. There's always something new and a new opportunity. And honestly, thankfully, with this, after having a stroke and having to change my life, a huge flip over of my life, I've had new opportunities that I probably would have never done. So I love that comment, and I was I wrote it down.
That is something that we've talked a lot about in here at Bind, and what I heard in my early recovery is, we know what we could do. We don't know what we are going to be able to do next. So there is finding the new you, the new me. And a lot of new brain injury survivors, especially I would say the older you are when you have a brain injury, the less you like that term of new me, new full restoration. What's the new? They don't like that. They still want to be the old, because unfortunately we can still remember that.
Right. And different doesn't mean worse.
Right. It doesn't.
That in no way does that mean where Blake is today and the impact that he has in his life and who he is. Blake's already the person I hope to become one day.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
Truthfully, he just got there so much faster than I did, and then he would have if he didn't. So having that new paradigm shift and that new perspective, that what's that new path and journey look like? Everybody, and actually, here's the last thing: just brain injury survivors don't have that. Everybody has that. I don't know how many people start their life out and actually forward think what it's going to look like at the end, and the reality it's going to look like that. Nobody does that. So it's just not unique to somebody that's a TBI survivor or a stroke survivor. It's for anything, right? So to understand, we're all going to be looking at it on a different path one way or the other.
Right. Thank you so much for that. So a lot of us actually had a lot of questions during the documentary. We were like, what? But one of them that actually was very, I think, really interesting was how were you able to let him gain awareness? Because I think that was also very difficult as a mother, as a father. When do you let them do what they need to be doing and not 100% of the help from parents? How were you guys able to do that? Through the recovery and rehabilitation, to let him gain awareness of what he needed to do to be independent. Where did you figure that out?
Well, and still a struggle, because where Blake thinks he's at, we're like, you're not, you can't. And so there's still some things that we struggle with because he thinks he's capable of doing a lot more than he can. And so that's been a struggle of not wanting to hold him back, but then also for safety reasons.
Sure.
There's things that we have to think about. So
like stairs.
Yes. He thinks, and so because him too, the stroke affected his right side, and so he can't hold the railing on the right side. And getting him to think about that and process it before he goes downstairs. Which side do I need to go on? And so that's something that we're constantly, and he says, Mom, I'm going to be 50 and you're going to be walking in front of me in front of stairs all the time thinking I'm going to fall. I'm like, well, I know. Yes. But until I know that he's aware. But that's something that we have to struggle with. We struggle with is what we got to give him a little bit. Got to give him a little bit more. He's 23, and so we do want him to be independent and live on his own. So what does that look like? And it can't be us there doing his pills every morning, and this is what you got to take, and so trying to give him that and making sure it's still in a safe environment.
We met with the doctors, right? And they said he wouldn't wake up, much less be where he is. When we asked him then after he got out of his coma, what's the likelihood Blake will be independent one day? And they said he won't. So at that time, when he was 16, Cindy and I put a date that by 25, we wanted to get him to a point to where he could be independent.
Oh,
well,
okay.
Long story short, we've been doing school and then college and about to graduate in 2 weeks from now from college at Texas Tech University. And the next step is to do exactly what you just asked, is to help them develop life skills, independent living life skills. There are facilities that we could send them away for a year or whatever, and they'll teach them all these things, right? Because his goal was to, have a family and get a job and do all those things. Well, all the way up to this point, it's been hard on Blake because we're pushing him to get to where he is now. To do this, it's going to be much harder on us, I think, is, getting him to that point. So we're right in the process, right now in the midst of figuring out how do we help him get to that point.
I mean, I think you guys already figured it out. You've mentioned really great things, having these opportunities of having these independence, maybe apartment buildings or something that help that part. So I think you guys already mentioned something great. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And as we wrap up, I have one thing that y'all touched on in the documentary that I personally, and I know a lot of the survivors want to know, and I want to make our listeners aware of and our subscribers, is y'all are very involved in the advocacy and lobbying down and working with the Texas legislature. Do you have any tips or tricks or things that you could tell us, or maybe even email us, that we could include in the run notes of this podcast so that we can know how we can get more involved in advocating for brain injury survivors and kind of what to do?
Well, first of all, be a part of Brain Injury Association of America. right? But also with your local chapters. Research wherever you're located. Get involved with Bind. Get involved with BIAA. But then also in state legislature, the crazy thing is they may put their blessing and stamp of approval on something now, but it doesn't mean in the next session it's even going to be there. So it's not a one-time thing.
Right.
So I highly encourage you to get involved with your local politicians, and what's important for you. Get with them. Like Doc Anderson down in Waco is one of the committee members down there that we were able to work with, actually out of Dallas as well, which was Mr. Shields. He was down there in the house. So just pick it up, have conversations, get involved. They're willing to help. They really are. They're willing to listen. This is an epidemic that in a big way and big scale that they want to be able to try to find ways to help these brain injury survivors. And the Texas brain injury legislation about making sure that patients continue to get care if the doctor says they can improve is huge. And that is so nice here in the state. That's not all across the country. And so you can fight for the same awareness and policy in your hometown if it's needed. But it's going to take somebody stepping out to really kind of, make that happen.
Oh, great. Thanks. That's what we need to know.
Yes, that is. And I think that's something that all of us would like to be very involved with, because that's not just our today, it's for everyone's future. Yeah. Because this is, like you said, it's like a pandemic. We just don't know about it.
Yep.
We just don't know about brain injury. So
the silent epidemic.
It is.
Right.
And that's where Pat was, he fought. He got no, the answer no. He'd go to the next person. He'd go to the next person.
Right.
So he didn't give up until he got a yes. And that's where a lot of people, they don't have the energy. A lot of them are trying to do it by themselves. And so they take that no and they're like, okay. And so it's just finding the right people that will tell you yes and then fighting for it.
We're just never accepting the no.
Yep.
Yep. I don't want to hear no anymore.
We are all advocates for those we love and should be for ourselves.
Sure. Yes. Well, thank you so much for being here, for taking the time of your day, your week, everything to come here and talk to us.
Especially driving all the way from Waco.
Yes. So thank you so much, Pat and Cindy, for being here. And also thank you to all of our listeners listening to us every Thursday. And if you would like more information or would like to contact us, you can always email us at bindwaves@thebind.org.
And I would also let y'all know you can look on Facebook for Hi, I'm Blake and follow them as well. But don't forget to go ahead and click that notify button if you're watching on YouTube. Click the like button wherever you are, and remember to share. Go ahead and subscribe and just keep on listening. And remember, you can find us on all your favorite platforms. So until next time. We hope you've enjoyed listening to Bind Waves and continue to support Bind and our nonprofit mission.
We support brain injury survivors as they reconnect into the life, the community, and their workplace.
And we couldn't do that without great listeners like you. We appreciate each and every one of you. Continue watching. Until next time.
Until next time.